Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Yuat. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Kenyan authorities deploy troops to search for scores of missing residents after a flash flood kills dozens. Malawi's economic and accountability bodies are urging the government to address flaws in the public procurement system. And in our technology report, a healthcare chain in Ghana uses technology to enhance patient care quality. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Anguish hovers over parts of Kenya on Wednesday as rescue workers search for survivors following a flash flood that killed dozens of people and left scores missing in the Kenyan town of Mai Mahiu. The government is deploying troops to help with search operations. The flood, which struck in the early hours of Monday, swept away houses, cars and railway tracks, leaving residents reeling from the disaster. The Kenyan Red Cross and other aid groups are housing displaced residents in schools around the area. President William Ruto visited the flood-hit community on Tuesday to assess the damage. At least 169 people have died across Kenya since last month due to heavy rains and flooding, according to the president's office. Pope Francis on Wednesday spoke about Kenya's devastating floods.
I also wish to express to the people of Kenya my spiritual closeness at this time, as severe flooding has tragically taken the lives of many of our brothers and sisters, injured others, and caused widespread destruction. I invite you to pray for all those affected by this natural disaster.
The 87-year-old pontiff's words came as rescuers in Kenya are still trying to recover victims' bodies as the number of people still missing continues to rise. U.S. officials are negotiating the removal of American troops from Niger after the country's military junta ended a long-standing pact. Niger is the latest country in the Sahel to boot out Western forces and replace them with Russian troops. Analysts say similar moves are not improving military security for Niger's neighbors Mali and Burkina Faso. Henry Wilkins explains.
The U.S. State Department said Wednesday that U.S. officials in Niger were negotiating the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the country. 2 weeks earlier, Russian troops arrived in Niger's capital, Niamey, to offer security support in the country's 9-year-old conflict with militants linked to Islamic State group and Al-Qaeda. Niger is the latest Sahel country fighting an insurgency to eject Western forces and replace them with Russian troops, after neighbouring Burkina Faso and Mali. One analyst told VOA the move was unlikely to improve security, however.
Mali chasing away France only to replace it with Russia is not a sign of sovereignty. On the contrary, we have delegated our sovereignty even further. I don't believe that Russia can provide significant assistance.
Data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project shows that deadly violence continued to rise after Russian troops arrived in Mali in December of 2021. Deaths from conflict more than doubled in 2022 from the year before. In Burkina Faso, conflict deaths doubled in 2023, the year France withdrew. Russian troops arrived in January 2024. Nonetheless, anti-Western sentiment has risen across the Sahel in recent years, in particular against France, the former colonial power in the region.
It derives from the principle that the presence of Western troops who have been there for around 10 years has not succeeded in reversing the trend of violence.
Conspiracy theories that Western forces are assisting militants are also rife in the Sahel, in part due to Russian disinformation campaigns, experts say. International media have reported the departure of US troops as a victory for Russian geopolitical interests. But Kone says it's about Niger's right to choose its partners.
No, I do not see this as a victory for Russia. It is an interpretation that I find a bit simplistic because Niger is a sovereign country.
Both analysts VOA spoke to agree that America's departure will leave big gaps in Niger's ability to conduct military operations, particularly in intelligence gathering. Not all American troops may be withdrawing. a top US military official told the Associated Press on Thursday. He said that negotiations with Niger are ongoing. Henry Wilkins, VOA News.
The United Nations Security Council met this week to discuss the crisis in Sudan, specifically the city of El Fasher in North Darfur, which the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, says is on the precipice of a large-scale massacre. There are already credible reports that the Rapid Support Forces and its allied militias have destroyed several villages west of El Fasher, and the RSF is planning an attack soon on El Fasher. For more insight on the Sudan crisis, VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir joins me from the United Nations in New York. Margaret, how's the UN Security Council addressing a possible attack on El Fasher?
Yeah, Esther, a lot of concern in this building, growing by the day about El Fasher. Real concerns that the RSF could have already even breached the city. It's very hard to get information from the ground there. We heard from Yale researchers recently. They did a report. They're watching from outer space, and they say that the RSF has basically encircled the Sudanese armed forces in the city. So if you can imagine the army is trapped, imagine the fate of the civilians in El Fasher. And it's the only the part of Darfur that hasn't already fallen to the RSF, so the only state, North Darfur. So many hundreds of thousands of displaced persons have come to El Fasher seeking safety. So it's becoming a very big issue of concern. The Security Council issued a statement about it. They called on both the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to de-escalate, to end the buildup of their military forces, and just basically to comply with their obligations under international humanitarian law to protect civilians. They also repeated their call for an immediate cessation of hostilities. You may recall the Council had asked for a Ramadan ceasefire in Sudan, but that call fell on deaf ears. Doesn't look like this call will be picked up either, I'm afraid. And there's also a UN arms embargo on Sudan, on the government, and there's a lot of calls for countries to respect that. Arms have been flowing into Darfur in particular, from Chad, from Central African Republic and Libya.
And Margaret, any other, discussions maybe on the side proposing something to the effect that, the United Nations Security Council could possibly intervene and prevent this attack?
I don't think we're there yet, Esther. The UN Secretary General has a personal envoy for Sudan, and he has been speaking with both the RSF and the SAF. So perhaps we'll see some sort of movement from that end.
And how is the UN Security Council addressing the humanitarian crisis that now has, of course, gone on for a year? Now we're entering a second year, so to speak.
Right. Well, that's not really what they're addressing, but the UN Humanitarian Affairs Department is addressing it. We have to note that El Fasher is a main humanitarian hub for Sudan, and it has been for many, many years. So if El Fasher goes down in conflict, the humanitarian hub will be cut off, and that is very bad because you have aid workers, you have warehouses, all of that will stop. Already on Monday, the UN Department of Humanitarian Affairs said aid is essentially cut off already. So they're having a very difficult time. They have a dozen aid trucks with supplies for 122,000 people stranded next door in northern state because they can't continue to El Fasher because of the insecurity and lack of safe passage guarantees from the parties. So they're very concerned. Look, famine is on the doorstep in Sudan. This past year has been really, really difficult. Grain production has fallen by half. Farmers are fleeing their farms because of the fighting. So all of this is just coming together in a very bad way, and there is a lot of concern in this building that there will be massacres and atrocities like we saw in 20 years ago in Darfur if the RSF advances on El Fasher.
Sad to hear. Margaret, many thanks. VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir reporting live for us from New York. Economic and accountability bodies in Malawi are urging the government to address flaws in the public procurement system. A 2021 Malawi Assurance Report on Public Infrastructure projects suggests pervasive corruption in the public sector. Chimwemwe Padata reports from Lilongwe.
A signpost warning motorists of impending potholes for the next 102 kilometers. And this is along Malawi's M1 road that connects the northern, central and southern parts of the country. This is a strong indication of the current state of the road infrastructure. Several social and economic experts have since encouraged the government to speed up rehabilitation works on the road if Malawi is to bolster her socio-economic development. Potholes and other road defects are an integral part of the daily urban experience. Beyond posing a threat to drivers and their passengers, they represent one of the impediments to the socio-economic development of a country.
The current condition of the road is increasing vehicle costs, travel time, and even damage to the carried load.
As a result of the deteriorating road condition, motorists take 3 hours to travel between Lilongwe and Kasungu, a distance that was initially covered in less than 2 hours. Economist Beth Apiri is adamant that the country's road infrastructure has affected economic growth.
If we do have a good road infrastructure, what it entails is that the social and economic development can flourish so easily because the roads have a potential actually to stimulate the volume of trade. Opening up of new markets, attracting more investors actually.
Accountability and transparency bodies are pointing out flaws in public procurement systems that enable bribery, allowing unqualified construction firms to secure major contracts.
We have seen contracts being awarded to individuals who do not have even a single machinery, a single company. We have also seen infrastructure projects that are of substandard simply because there was collusion between government officials and contractors, and the result is delivery of poor infrastructure projects.
In response to growing concerns about the condition of the country's roads, Minister of Transport and Public Works Jacob Hara has reassured Malawians of swift rehabilitation efforts. Against this background, the construction industry regulator, the National Construction Industry Council of Malawi, NCIC, has upped its game, providing supervision on existing projects.
There are circumstances that lead to poor quality of infrastructure, one of which would be corruption. Some projects have actually failed at conception. The way the project is conceived, it is already a failure. Sometimes they fail at procurement.
The industry regulator has started issuing stop orders on construction projects that have breached contractual agreements in line with the National Construction Industry Act. Commuters say urgent actions are needed to fix the existing road network and ensure the implementation of the country's ambitions. Malawi envisions creating a multi-modal transport system by year 2063. One of the key components of the plan is to have well-maintained and upgraded roads connecting urban and rural areas.
In the next few years, we'll pick up, especially looking at the large projects such as roads, which don't take months, even a year to be completed. But we expect, because we have seen a lot of commitment from the government, we have seen a lot of commitment from the private sector, we have seen a lot of commitment from development partners.
A 2023 World Bank Transport Infrastructure Sector Assessment Program report shows that Malawi needs 1.5 trillion kwacha, an equivalent of $8.6 million for road projects by 2025 to spur economic growth. Chimwemwe Padata, VOA News, Lilongwe, Malawi.
On Thursday, in our series on corruption, we'll feature a legal executive at South Africa's state-owned passenger rail agency who blew the whistle on unlawful government contracts. So be sure to join us. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa attended a Labor Day rally in Cape Town on Wednesday as workers, activists and others across Africa and around the world are marking the day with rallies against the global pressure of rising prices and calling for greater worker rights. Labor Day has its origins with the struggles of workers and their trade unions internationally for solidarity between working people in their battles to win fair employment standards and, more importantly, to establish a culture of human and worker rights and to ensure that these are enshrined in international law. Wednesday is a national holiday in many countries across Africa and worldwide. A majority of younger voters in this year's U.S. presidential election say they wish they had someone other than Democrat Joe Biden or Republican Donald Trump to choose from. Some of that has to do with the candidates' advanced ages. VOA correspondent Scott Stearns has our story.
In a race between the two oldest presumptive major party nominees to run for president, there are questions in this campaign about the candidates' fitness for office, especially from younger voters. Desmond Kager would like a different choice.
Republicans or Democrats can, put someone on the ticket that actually is, worth voting for, then a vote for them.
A Pew Research survey last week found that 2/3 of voters under age 30 would replace both candidates if they had the chance. So who are the young people backing Biden or Trump? Concerns about reproductive rights means Biden has the support of Francesca Paniello.
I think abortion is important to me, abortion care, the right to be able to choose.
Abortion rights and recreational marijuana are both on the Florida ballot this November. That's bringing out younger voters for Democratic causes, says Jaden D'Onofrio.
Youth voters have a real opportunity to shape the electoral landscape here in Florida. We've seen that the right to choice and recreational marijuana are critical to the beliefs and importance of youth voters and what's top of mind for them, especially with the right to choice.
Some young people oppose Biden for his support for Israel in the war in Gaza, but that's likely to earn him the vote of Eliana Stein.
Right now, for me, one of the most important things is continued support for Israel, especially throughout this conflict that's going on. So I really appreciate everything that President Biden has been doing to support the country of Israel in this current conflict.
Young people supporting Trump include Wisconsin voters Brianna Bonilla and Jonathan Boyer.
I've tried to have conversations with people who don't like Trump, and they're like, you can leave, I don't want to talk to you anymore. So I think that's the main problem. People aren't open to listening. They're just like, if you like Trump, you're a horrible person, or just that. So I feel like...
Yeah, there's never any open discussion,
I feel like if you're able to have an open discussion, I feel like a lot of people make it say, they just come off like you can't say anything, or they won't talk to you, or they'll tell everyone.
Young Trump supporters are accustomed to people their age questioning their political choices, says Isaiah Turner.
I'll go to the bars wearing a Trump 2024 hat, and I get weird looks like crazy all around for people, but I don't really, it doesn't bother me.
Turner says he admires Trump's stance against corruption.
I think there is a ton of corruption. And I think that there's a lot of very scandalous things that is going on all over the world. And I think Trump is one of the only men that has actually had the balls on him, so to say, to call out these people and not be afraid of them. I just feel like he's going to do what's best for the country, A
Reuters Ipsos poll in March showed Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 favor Biden over Trump by 3 percentage points. That's a far smaller margin than the 24% gap that Biden won the youth vote with 4 years ago. Scott Stearns, VOA News.
Still to come, using technology to create solutions for healthcare. We'll be right back.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, what drives migration in and out of Africa, and often to treacherous routes to other countries? Some seek better jobs, others asylum, and others flee war and persecution. What will it take to curb the migration? Join Vincent McCory for an in-depth analysis on the next Straight Talk Africa.
World Press Freedom Day is here, and this year the focus is A Press for the Planet, under the theme Journalism in the Face of the Environmental Crisis. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we hear what environmental experts and journalists in Africa are highlighting as the issues at hand and available solutions in preserving our environment. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, United Nations officials say UN peacekeepers are stopping operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo's South Kivu province after more than 20 years. The MONUSCO mission, which had begun to wind down in January, will now limit operations to the provinces of North Kivu and Ituri, according to a UN statement. A UN-backed court has announced it has issued an arrest warrant for the Central African Republic's former president, Francois Bozize, over possible crimes against humanity committed by the military between 2009 and 2013. The alleged crimes include murder, enforced disappearance, torture, rape, and other inhumane acts, according to the Special Criminal Court. And Zimbabwe has started circulating a new currency to replace one that has been battered by depreciation and often outright rejection by the people. The Zimbabwe dollar is out and the ZiG is in. It's the Southern African country's latest attempt to halt a long-running currency crisis, underlining its persistent economic troubles. Technology can transform healthcare in Africa, offering a brighter future for everyone. Africa 54 technology correspondent Paul Ndiho is here to tell us more. Hello, Paul.
Thanks, Esther. Revia, an asset-light healthcare chain in Ghana, is partnering with existing clinics to enhance patient care quality by leveraging technology and creating solutions to reduce emergency room overcrowding. I spoke with Isdo, the CEO of Revia, about the company's network of primary healthcare clinics.
Last year, I was in the clinic to treat an ear infection. I was having a terrible ear infection, so I went to the clinic. When I got to the clinic, I wanted to return because of the state of the facility. The walls were very dilapidated. And this was in Accra, Ghana, by the way. I saw papers all over the place, and I knew for sure that I was not going to receive quality treatment in that facility. You see, the state of infrastructure is not just, it's not the sole indicator of the quality of care that one would receive, but in this part of the world, that is the thing you see the most. The first impression counts the same. So, I went ahead to have my treatment, my ear treatment, infection treatment in that facility. But then I was very curious to understand if the many primary care facilities we have in Accra were in a similar state. And to my shock, over 90% were in a similar state. Then I was no surprised why many people did not have trust in Africa's healthcare system. So we embarked on a journey to transform that narrative. We decided that we would partner with existing facilities. So the goal is to build a network of primary care clinics offering high-quality doctor consultations, lab services, and medications, virtually and in person.
How are you able to do this? Where are you getting the funds to scale very fast? As I see you've also, you're trying to acquire some new places. What does it take to do that?
Great. We have 6 clinics today. We have moved the quality of care from the average 2.8% over 5 to 4.4 for regional clinics. People want value for their money. And given that what we are providing offers greater value at the same price, that's really important. Offering value without inflating the price, and we're able to offer that. And they are super excited. There is intense pressure on us to scale the service to multiple locations, Accra, and even beyond Ghana.
There are a lot of people who think that, for example, the healthcare industry has, let's say, it has the skill set it needs. But in some cases, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists don't have the tools they need to do their jobs. You are now in this space. What's your take?
I have seen that firsthand. Africa does not have a lack of qualified healthcare professionals. Some of the doctors operating in the other healthcare systems we run into, like in the UK, whereas in America, are the same African doctors who were trained on the African continent, are the same nurses who were trained on the African continent. So if you go to the UK today, you see a lot of African nurses, right? You go to America today, you see a lot of American doctors. So
yeah, my dentist, my family physician, they are all from West Africa. One is Nigerian, another one is Ghanaian.
You see that? So the problem is not a skilled problem. We cannot address this in an isolated manner. We need to work as an ecosystem, from government to the private sector, and agree that we have a crisis. Lack of tools, lack of diagnostic devices, machines, is affecting the quality of treatment. Without diagnostics, doctors cannot treat patients. And Africa's finance budgets, only 1% of Africa's finance budget is financing diagnostics equipment on the continent. Only 1%, right? And so we need to take a systemic approach, an ecosystem approach, to addressing, the lack of equipment in the industry.
Tell me something about the clinics that you have partnered with. What do they need for them to be partners with you?
So there's a business model requirement, which for us, which is that the clinic must be located in an area that is accessible. The clinic itself must be willing to accept the standards that really set, the framework that really set, which is completely different from what they've been used to. If they agree to these positions, it's pretty simple for us to work together. And the clinics that we currently work with are small to medium-sized clinics. Typically, you're looking at 3 to 10 bed facilities. So these are primary care clinics. We take them to the regional process where we first take the facility to a certain level.
That was Isdor Potefe, CEO of Ravia, based in Accra, Ghana. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho each Wednesday for the latest in technology on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.